if we look at those growers,
Yep.
what's the common mistake or
Yeah.
what are veg growers doing prior to that 300% bump that they're missing?
Yeah, that's a great question. The bulk of my veg grower clients are organic growers, and organic growers who, before they'd come to me, was they weren't soil testing, and they felt that if the garden wasn't going too well, it needed more compost or more manure. And they were really making a mess of their soils with overuse of compost and overuse of manures, and especially compost made with a high percentage of manures. You can very quickly create a major problem. And those were the biggest problems. We're also using mushroom compost. I typically tell people now that if you feel like using mushroom compost in your soil, lay down until the feeling goes away, because it's not designed for growing leafy plants. It's designed for growing fungi. And by the time you get it, the mushroom farmers have already used it and used up most of the nutrients in it. You're getting a waste product that's out of balance, and it really messes up your soil.
The compost thing is interesting because I know just from doing this podcast, other podcasts, talking to growers, people love compost ad nauseum, ad infinitum, and they think more is better. What problem can you get yourself into as a gardener or farmer by applying copious amounts of compost?
The obvious one is an imbalance of minerals. All composts aren't created equal, and the quality of the compost is determined by the ingredients it's made from. So if you're making compost from plant material only, say if you're a veg grower, if you use all your offcuts, waste material from the veg, and that's your only compost material, it's difficult to overuse it. It'll be, assuming your soil was in reasonably good balance to start with, to grow those plants, it will be good compost. But the mineral balance of those plants determines on the original soil condition they grew in. Yeah, but when you start making compost and then adding other products like manure, you can. And I used to teach making compost using manure and fish and lots of really rich ingredients. That's fine, but you have to then know how much to use, because once you start putting manures in, the quantity required is dramatically less. And the only way to know is to test your soil and test the compost. And from that, you can calculate how much compost you can use. What is the maximum amount you can use? Because one of the biggest issues that comes from using too much compost that contain manures is you get a high amount of phosphorus. And the single biggest problem you can have with the soil is excessive phosphorus. High amounts of anything is not a problem if all of the nutrients are equally at that level. But when you get, say, high phosphorus and then you've got other nutrients that are low, the imbalance is significant, and phosphorus doesn't leach out of the soil. The only way to get it out is to grow it out. And once phosphorus gets excessive, it locks up in the soil and your plants can't access it. I've had 4 clients now where they came to me because they had problems, and we tested their soil and their phosphorus was through the roof because of overuse of manures, and the plants couldn't access phosphorus. So in order to get their current crop through, we designed a foliar phosphorus to get the plants growing. Those 4 that had really messed it up, they could no longer grow veg in that soil. I said to them, if you've got enough land, shift to a new area, because you won't fix that for decades, because the amount you've got to grow out is significant and your plants can't access it. And 3 of them had to sell their property and start again.
Do you think part of that problem is one of the main things mycorrhizal fungi do is scavenge for phosphorus? If you over apply phosphorus, you shut down the fungi because you don't need them.
You don't need them.
The fungi are aiding in that the exchange of phosphorus for sugars. Is that part of the issue with being too high?
No, it's not directly. The issue with being too high is totally chemical. Plants, primary nutrition of plants is chemistry. And I've said for a while, and I often get criticized by academia, I've said for a while that chemistry precedes biology, always. It always has. That's how life formed on this planet. And that's how plants continue to function. Microbes decompose organic detritus as their primary food. They don't do it because they want the plant. They're trying to access the chemistry within that detritus. That's their primary. So if you provide the plant with the chemistry, you get an instant response. But interestingly, when soils are not balanced correctly, when you balance them with fertilizer, and you can use organic growers will use organic allowable inputs, conventional growers will use the cheapest available, microbes respond the same to both. And when you put a fertilizer on, you might see in a few days great plant response. The microbes respond instantly because many of them are single-celled. Their response is huge. When I was doing the compost tea brewing, it was winter, and I wanted a high nitrogen compost tea. And the training was that you put lucerne into your brewer with other feedstocks and your compost that you're brewing up. And the lucerne, of course, provides nitrogen. It was taking 36 hours to make a brew. And the idea is you want a brew that's high in protozoa because they are the big nitrogen producers. And after brewing a couple, I thought about what I was doing, and I thought, if they're after nitrogen, and it's a really slow process to release the nitrogen out of this lucerne, why don't I just put a little bit of urea in? So the next brew I did, instead of putting in lucerne, I put a small amount of urea in. The brewing time went from 36 hours to 4 hours, and the microbial density of that brew was multiple times richer than what I was doing. So the urea wasn't toxic to the microbes; they feasted on it. Because I was observing it under my microscope on very regular basis after I put the urea in, and you get an explosion of bacteria, and bacteria are the food stock for protozoa. So you naturally get a protozoa boost because you're providing them with food. And if you go from 36-hour brewing to 4-hour brewing, even if the density was the same, I could get 3 brews a day out instead of 1 every day and a half. And the cost of production from running a electric air blower dramatically declined. So it was vastly more productive, more superior product. I was having discussions with Elaine Ingham over this, and as soon as I mentioned the benefits of urea, she no longer responded to my emails. And I thought, well, I've obviously offended her. And she hasn't spoken to me since. As I said before, chemistry precedes biology. Once you understand that, you can understand why microbes are accessing organic detritus and how plants respond so well to synthetic fertilizers. Many people say synthetic fertilizers are toxic to soil and kill microbes. That's total nonsense. Toxicity is about dose. So anything can be harmful if the dose is high enough. The key is getting the dose. Back to developing our soil management program, my son came up with this Excel spreadsheet. My daughter is a mathematician, and she's also a farmer. She developed another add-on spreadsheet where I could put the soil test in, and I can add a fertilizer, and it shows me instantly what that does to balancing the soil. So then we can very accurately fine-tune mineral balance and get it absolutely spot on for irrigation production, which is horticulture and irrigated cereal crops, etc. The optimum level of balance in the soil is 100%. Get it all spot on, because then you get the highest return on your investment in water, which can be expensive. But for dryland production, grazing, etc., and cropping, I work on 75% because you're relying on natural rainfall, which is unreliable, and that'll give you the best return on your investment relying on natural rain. Once you go higher, the cost goes up, and if you don't get rain, you don't get the return.